we are able to do such events not only once in a year, but perhaps we're already scheming with Ms. Bakshi about whether we might talk about a monthly lecture series, or different ideas are coming up from this event. So if I may simply say thank you very much for allowing us to be in this beautiful place, and for being the inspiration for this kind of conversation that might be held in your premises, but also with all of your great support.
I may reciprocate. We also like to thank you, because the outcome of this workshop would be a further deliberation. This morning, for example, Dr. Gandhi has given us the job looking at judicial pronouncements and all those sort of, and perhaps coming up with soft laws, guidelines or legal frameworks that will help the member state of ALKO, where we can work together with ICRC. That again, although we're going to have a reception this evening, I'd like to express our gratitude to the Red Cross and ICRC, because today, in conjunction with the Red Cross Day.
Thank you, Ms. Mary Burns. Thank you, Professor Muhammad. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we continue with the agenda and wish to spend briefly, literally no more than 7 minutes, and I will ask Ms. Bakshi to hold me to task on that, on the slot that has been dedicated to discussing IHL from law to practice, implementation, enforcement and compliance mechanisms. This slot was envisioned with the idea of being extremely practical and pragmatic after spending a day and a half on issues of legal substance and weight. And by and large, an event such as this one is typically a dissemination activity. Some may see it as a promotion of IHL activity, but it is also a perspective sharing exercise. We may not have agreed with everyone's opinion throughout the day and a half, but there are certainly opinions worthy of our consideration and our reflection. And we feel that just by engaging in this type of dialogue, we can understand the various arguments relating to IHL and even its application in various contexts. But enforcement is an entirely different issue. And I wish to begin at the end. Enforcement and compliance mechanisms are extremely important in respect of the arguments relating to the legitimacy of IHL. And you would know, through an initiative known as Strengthening Legal Compliance of International Humanitarian Law, the ICRC, in collaboration with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Switzerland, have engaged in a multilateral and global consultation on compliance mechanisms relating to IHL. And the argument is simple. Unlike human rights instruments, which have built-in mechanisms for monitoring states' compliance to international law instruments of human rights nature, such does not exist under IHL instruments. Article 90 of Additional Protocol 1 to the Geneva Conventions has a fact-finding commission which has never been invoked, notwithstanding the fact that it has been developed since 1977. A cursory glance of a front-page newspaper would remind us of the breaches of IHL taking place on a daily basis. And so this is a very real issue. How can the law be of any worth if compliance mechanisms do not exist? It is something which was formally raised in a document that Professor Gandhi referred to in his panel presentation, the Challenges Report, which was presented to the 31st International Red Cross and Red Crescent Conference. The ICRC has a duty, based on its commitment in that report, to report to the 32nd conference, which consists, by the way, of governments, National Red Cross and Red Crescent societies, as well as the ICRC and International Federation, to give an account of what has been done to move towards the establishment of more compliance mechanisms in IHL. So this is a work in progress, and this is why I've chosen to start at the end. It's very important, it's worth underscoring, and to let you know that your states, your governments have been actively involved in looking at other aspects of enforcement. Should there be an amendment to the Geneva Conventions to have a reporting mechanism? Should it be on an obligatory basis or a voluntary basis? What about the role of inquiry procedures which can exist? And so on and so forth. So it's important to make that known, that this dialogue is taking place. Insofar as the practice is concerned, you would have recalled yesterday that we had a member of, well, former members of the armed forces present, and persons who in their previous lives were members of the armed force. We have a colleague who is a former chief of staff. And it matters that we engage members of the armed forces because it is in the heat of the battlefield that IHL is really tested. And so when we speak of practice, we speak of our ongoing work with the armed forces. We speak of our understanding of joint forces, be it in South America with paramilitary groups, where in many respects also the police are called on to assist, in some cases, the armed forces, but more so the other way around, where the armed forces are often called upon to undertake law enforcement activities. So we may see a grey area of the law. And how do we, as an institution which takes seriously its role in trying to promote IHL, can play a role in respect of law enforcement activities which may involve the armed forces? So when we speak of practice, we speak of a very fluid situation, one which develops, but it's important for us to recognize that the ICRC has tools, we have training kits, we have various yearly opportunities which allow the armed forces to gain better perspective and understanding of IHL. But we go a step further where we can help armed forces, if they so desire, to translate the substance into operational doctrine, into practical rules which can benefit those on the front line, both from the armed forces and on the other side. We also speak specifically of the promotion of the law. In the documentation you would have received in your bags, I think there are 3 fact sheets on various topics. One on international humanitarian law, one on the obligation to disseminate IHL, and I believe implementation. These are known as fact sheets in the ICRC. Those are but 3 of over 29 fact sheets on various topics, all of which are available in soft copy on the ICRC's website and hard copy at the ICRC delegation in New Delhi. More fact sheets are being developed as we speak. A fact sheet is decontextualized based solely on legal issues. The ICRC is nearing the completion of a fact sheet on the repression and prevention of torture, one which has never existed before. And I'm pleased to say that this fact sheet originated from the ICRC delegation in New Delhi. Though it has been checked, it has been, of course, supported in substance by the ICRC headquarters in Geneva and its various departments. But it's important to recognize that it came from here. It started from here. And we look forward to sharing that fact sheet with you, perhaps in a similar forum, such as this, in the near future. But also there are other tools which are available. Yesterday we spoke about the use and the procurement of children in armed conflict. We have developed model laws to limit or prevent the prescription or use of children in armed conflict. It's something you may wish to look at, to visit. Again, available in soft copy online. Another tool which is made available is model laws which seek to implement IHL. Now, ALCO member states, much like ICRC delegations, work with legal jurisdictions that are both civil law and common law. And so the ICRC has recognized this and has developed model legislation for the common law jurisdiction as well as for the civil law jurisdiction. We also have partnerships with institutions that work specifically on common law jurisdictions, such as our model law on the Rome Statute on the ICC, which was developed with the Commonwealth Secretariat. So should you wish to visit a model implementing legislation on the ICC, please visit our website or that of the Commonwealth Secretariat to see this model. And these model laws are simply a tool. They're not set in stone. They can be amended and they can become flexible to suit the nuances and needs of each country. The ICRC this year will also engage in continued training and perspective sharing with parliamentary draftspersons. So persons in ministries of justice or parliamentary affairs whose principal job is to draft legislation. And we look forward to engaging you and your states on that issue as time nears. On concluding, I wish to mention an activity that has traditionally been very well received in this region and beyond, and that is the facility of moot court competitions. It's something that we need to mention because it's something that has been widely and positively received and embraced by many member states of ALKO and other countries. The Ori Do Not Moot Court competition has been held in Delhi traditionally in collaboration with the ICRC's long-standing partner, the Indian Society of International Law, of which members are currently present in this room. I take the opportunity to thank the ISIL, as we do ALKO, for the long-standing relationship which is also codified in a cooperation agreement. Ladies and gentlemen, this year, for the first time in India, the Ori Do Not Moot Court competition will be undertaken in different zones throughout this country. And the ISIL and ICRC have seen it fit this year to go out. Of course, this is a large country. There are many institutions that may not have the wherewithal or other resources to participate in a national competition in Delhi. And so we will hold a zonal round in the north and the south of the country and a national final round in New Delhi. And I am pleased to tell you that these competitions will take place in the months to come, with a national final round taking place in Delhi thereafter. The moot court problem will become available on the website of the ISIL, as well as the website or the blog of the ICRC. In addition to this, it is worth mentioning, since there are many experts in the room who have served traditionally as judges. I speak of Professor Gandhi, I speak of course of Sir Professor Muhammad, I speak of course of His Excellency Erickson as judges for this moot court competition. This is a public event, of course Professor Bura also. This is a public event which remains open to anyone interested in participating as an observer to view this event, and more will be told to you of this event in the near future as it relates to the final in Delhi. It is worth mentioning also that there will be this year, for the first time, the regional competition being held in Tehran, and it has never been before. We've held regional competitions of the moot court in Bangladesh and in Nepal, and of course in India with the ISIL in the past. So we are also exporting the moot court competition, so to speak, in a regional manner to different countries in this region, many of which are ALKO member states. It should be mentioned that the idea of mooting goes one step further based on a recent alliance we've had with the Hong Kong Red Cross, insofar as this region is concerned. And over the last few years, the moot court winners of the regional competition have advanced to the Asia Pacific round, which is held in collaboration with the Hong Kong Red Cross. The ICRC this year shall make the regional round of the South Asia round larger, so that more teams will have an opportunity to vie as its country winning team to the regional round, and more teams can go to the Asia Pacific round in Hong Kong. The last year's competition, Sri Lanka won the best Muta award, and the year before, the National Law University Delhi in Dwarka won the entire competition. And so there is much merit in engaging students, albeit in a fictional case, in rich discourse in IHL. Ms. Bakshi has not signaled to me, but I think she's being very kind. So I shall stop here, but to thank you all for your attention, to thank members of the IHL team who work very hard on these issues, and of course to thank colleagues from the ICRC who support these issues. I take the opportunity to thank myself, the ALKO Secretariat, for the excellent collaboration, not only for this event, but for events in the recent past, and I look forward to continued collaboration in the near future. Ladies and gentlemen, with your consent, I now invite those responsible to undertake the vote of thanks to please come to the head table to deliver the vote of thanks in this session, after which we shall open for 5 minutes the mic to the floor to be able to allow participants, in the spirit of the opening of this event, the opportunity to share any perspectives, should there be. And that's voluntary. So please, gentlemen, I invite you to undertake the vote of thanks at this time.
Let's go first.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to present the Deputy Secretary General of the ALKO Secretariat, Mr. Feng Guihu, to present his vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a necessity, but still more important. His Excellency Professor Dr. Rahmat Mohammed, Secretary General of ALKO. Her Excellency Ms. Mary Wentz, Head of Regional Delegation of the ICRC. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege and honor to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of the ALKO Secretariat at this ALKO ICRC workshop on international humanitarian law. To begin with, I would like to express my sincere gratitude towards Ms. Mary Wentz for her opening remarks and also other distinguished speakers who presented their views on contemporary challenges in IHL and enlightened us to facets of this subject, which might have been new to some of us. I extend my sincere appreciation to His Excellency Dr. S.P. Agarwal, Secretary General, Indian Red Cross Society, and His Excellency Mr. Simon Nisiri, Head of South Asian Regional Delegation for the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, for their keynote addresses during the inaugural session of this workshop. On behalf of ALKO and myself, I would like to extend my thanks for the eminent speakers and participants for gracing us with their presence, as well as all those in attendance today. We are also honored by the presence of high dignitaries and officials from ALKO member states, as well as from the missions in New Delhi. This event would also not have been successful without the active and lively participation from representatives of the non-member states, international organizations, academicians, and young students. Lastly, I thank the Secretary General, His Excellency Professor Dr. Rahmat Mohammed, and Her Excellency Ms. Mary Wentz, Head of Regional Delegation, ICRC, for jointly agreeing to the necessity and timeliness to organize this extremely useful workshop. I would also like to sincerely thank the entire team of ICRC and ALKO Secretariat for their earnest efforts in planning and conducting this workshop in a very professional manner. It is my earnest hope that this workshop has been successful in providing an informative and constructive forum to all participants and attendees on this significant topic of IHL. I am sure each one we'll go back more enlightened, and this would give us food for serious thought on how we could either carry out more productive research on this topic or contribute in some other meaningful manner to alleviate the sufferings of the victims of modern-day warfare. Before I conclude, I take this opportunity to invite each one of you to the social dinner organized by ALKO and ICRC to commemorate the World Red Cross Red Crescent Day 2014, which would be hosted at Hotel Claridge's from 7 p.m. onwards. For those of you traveling back to your capitals, I wish you all a very safe journey. It may be a little bit early, but I must say, before we disperse, lunch is served and everyone is invited for it. Thank you. Now I invite Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Professor Ahmad Mohammed, Secretary General of the Asian African Legal Consultative Organization, ALKO, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners of ALKO member states and other states, Mr. Feng, Deputy Secretary of ALKO, other officials from the ALKO Secretariat, colleagues from the International Red Cross and Red Crescent Movement, members of the media, students, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my privilege to share in the delivery of the vote of thanks before this gathering. The coordination of this event takes the ALKO Secretariat and the ICRC one step closer towards a strengthened relationship of collaboration and promotion of international humanitarian law. My own experience, based on my participation yesterday, assured me of the substantial legal dissemination and spirited dialogue which would follow throughout this event. I thank Professor Ahmad Mohammed, the Secretary General of ALKO, and the Deputy Secretaries General and staff of the ALKO Secretariat for embracing the object and purpose of our cooperation agreement. I also thank Professor Mohammed for taking time out of his busy schedule to inaugurate the workshop and to lend his support to other aspects of the day's proceedings. During her opening remarks, our head of delegation, Mary Burns, reminded us of states' competing priorities and interests which may create a challenge for IHL implementation. However, we see on a daily basis that IHL violations and other international crimes create unwarranted and avoidable human suffering and must therefore be addressed by the global community. This, ladies and gentlemen, remains our responsibility to humanity. On behalf of the ICRC, I take this opportunity to express my deepest gratitude to the expert panelists for sharing their learned academic positions and practical views on various aspects of this event's agenda. The workshop and its themes were developed and adopted after numerous rounds of internal consultations and external meetings. A snapshot of today's battlefield shows us that the evolution of the law in general, and IHL in particular, is inextricably linked to developments in society and advancements in science and technology, as we discussed yesterday. The rapid pace of advancements in weapons technology has led to numerous challenges, which necessitate a paradigm shift in our understanding and application of traditional IHL perspectives. Yesterday's discussion on drones was essentially an articulation of this transformation. I thank Professor Singadar Shah from Pakistan and retired Wing Commander of India, Dr. U.C. Jha, for their invaluable contribution towards a very topical and important aspect of new means of methods of warfare. This was followed by a session on the compelling issue of direct participation in hostilities, a recurring challenge on today's battlefield which leads to significant legal questions and implications. You would agree with me that the presence and perspectives of Mr. Palitha Fernando, Attorney General of Sri Lanka, and Professor Susan Lamb of Jindal Global Law School added to the richness of debate and myriad of perspectives relating to the protection of civilians in armed conflict. We also had the pleasure of welcoming His Excellency Gudmundur Eriksson, Ambassador of Iceland to India, to serve as chair of today's first session on challenges relating to IHL and contemporary armed conflict. I wish to place on record our deepest appreciation to His Excellency, not only for his continued display of eloquence, but also for his constant support to the ICRC and inspiration for students of the law. I also thank Professor Gandhi, formerly Joint Secretary General of Legal and Treaty Division at the Indian Ministry of External Affairs, who has over the years interacted with the ICRC on various levels, and to Mr. Dominique Bart, the head of mission of UNHCR here in India, for sharing their own expert perspectives on this very important topic. Ladies and gentlemen, I also wish to place on record my deep appreciation to all ICRC colleagues for their coordination of this event and participation in the agenda. Be it as chair, moderator, or logistics coordinator, I thank you, colleagues, for your continued efforts towards IHL promotion, dissemination, and implementation. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, the ICRC reiterates its immense gratitude to the ALCO Secretariat, its Secretary General, Deputy Secretary General, its Principal Legal Advisor, and other legal advisors and other ALCO staff members whose efforts have contributed to the success of this event. We are convinced, if never before, that collaboration between the ALCO Secretariat and ICRC provides meaningful opportunities to engage in and to provide a forum for multilateral dialogue on legal issues which are near and dear to us. On concluding, we recall that today is the 8th of May, a very historic day for the International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement. It is a day of perspective-taking for those involved in and affected by armed conflict. It is a day of institutional reflection and recognition of an opportunity to do more for those in need of protection and assistance in armed conflict and other situations of disaster. Ladies and gentlemen, today the World Red Cross and Red Crescent Day is commemorated globally, and with that continued hope for greater respect for IHL by all parties to an armed conflict. Like my esteemed colleague, and on behalf of the ICRC, I would like to take this opportunity to invite all of you to the World Red Cross Day commemoration, which will be held this evening in collaboration with ALCO at the Claridge Hotel, New Delhi. I thank you once again and look forward to further exchanges in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we open the floor to you, participants, for any comments or any reflections you may have.
We, on behalf of the participants, convey our heartfelt gratitude to ICRC, ALCO, and ISL for giving this opportunity to avail this workshop and educate ourselves for returning something to the motherland and the fellow citizens, fraternity all over the world. But my temptation is on the last topic, that is about enforcement, compliance and implementation. It was having a slot of 1 hour, but ultimately, just like other workshops, it is, I feel, from the core of the heart, not given proper HLM in the workshop. This ICRC is of 19th century, we are in 21st century. After 1945, to the best of our knowledge and belief, there have been civil wars, or at least have contained a major element of civil war. The application of the laws of war to civil war raises both a legal and practical problem. Already Mr. Gandhi has elaborated it in his lucid manner. The legal problem is that government usually have been reluctant to create or sign to a body of law which would bind their freedom of action in dealing with armed rebellions. I would request to throw some light. ALCO management as well as ICRC management, what UNO or ICRC is planning to avoid the limitations of treaty-based rules and laws. How to secure, motivate or compel compliance with the law at all. What is the thinking for new system of implementation and enforcement? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And if I may, by way of reply, I cannot disagree with you on the time allocated to a very important issue, that of compliance and enforcement, which, as mentioned, is currently at the state level of discussion with an obligation to report to states on December the 15th, 2015, as per the 31st International Conference. In respect of the other issue of IHL enforcement of compliance obligations under treaties, you would recall that the ALCO Secretariat, much like the ICRC, can do so much and no more, mindful of the sovereignty of states, which we as organizations fully respect and abide by within the structure of public international law. I feel confident to speak on behalf of our partner organization, however, that both organizations stand ready, willing and able, given its mandate and competencies, to support states in taking that legislative step forward towards greater compliance via the law and, if possible, otherwise. Thank you.
From the Sri Lankan High Commission, thank you very much for inviting the High Commission as well as the Honorable Attorney General to participate in this workshop. Having served in Geneva for more than 4.5 years, I had my full dose of IHL in Geneva, and it's just recalling what I heard and what I saw here also being discussed after almost 2.5 years, the same issues. So thank you for having invited us. The final message from the head of ICRC delegation was promising to have a monthly lecture series, perhaps on issues of unfolding issues within the IHL, for example, the climate refugees, disaster management and IHL, loss and damage issues in the climate change and how relevant it is to IHL. So those are the things that we could ponder in far away from multilateral stations and maybe give a feedback in the context of bilateral and accredited mission-related relations that we cover from our missions here. Thank you. Thank you for having this workshop.
Thank you. Sir.
Your Excellencies, participants, everyone here, on behalf of the government and the people of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, I'd like to say thank you for the invitation to participate in this event. For those of you who don't know, Trinidad and Tobago is a small island developing state, most southern Caribbean, but for us, we've been trying to make a good contribution to the international community. We have nationals, for example, Mr. Charles Savka, who we are very proud of, right? And you know, it's good for us. It's good for us. The dialogue, the interaction, the presentations. Some may not be applicable to Trinidad and Tobago. Some are, and I'd like to thank ALCO. I'd like to thank the ICRC for this seminar, this workshop. You know, sometimes these things can be described as just mere talk shops and so on, but you know, the information, the value of these things is not today, you'll see it in the long run. So I'd like to, for the students, I'd just like to say, if you have a passion in international humanitarian law or international law, pursue your passion, and I'd like to wish you all the best in your studies. Thank you.
Sahina Bashara from the University of Kashmir. At the outset, I would like to thank ICRC and ALCO for organizing this workshop. It's been very informative, very educative. The only thing that I would like to add is I wish we had more of a discussion and debate on cyber attacks. I think that is one topic that was left, that was not completely dealt with in detail. But I hope to look forward to such a workshop on especially dealing in cyber attacks.
Noted. Thank you. Sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Aliuba from the Embassy of the Republic of the Gambia. First of all, let me thank the members of the ICRC who are here, and ALCO, as well as all those eminent speakers. It has been a very good school for me, particularly because my background is finance. I just joined the diplomatic service in 2011. But over time, all of us here must have witnessed the mass movement of people from Africa to Europe and some other third world countries under the pretext of economic migrants. Others are refugees. From Africa, most of the time, which is due to the unfortunate government systems we have in some African countries. Let me put it in that way, some African countries, because it's not all of them. So here, what I would want to know from the ICR, what are they doing and how do they delineate between economic migrants and those who are refugees? Because 2 days ago I was watching some of the groups who were stranded in Niger or in Niger, and there were some ladies among them. And unfortunately, because of the hardship and these people cannot proceed to Libya, then to Europe, some of the ladies are now engaged into prostitution. And that was the report I saw on BBC on Focus on Africa. And when they asked the ladies why are they doing that, they said that's the only thing they could do to make their living. And in Libya recently, some of the migrants, among them were some Gambians. They were so badly treated. Some of them, petrol was poured on them and set ablaze, which are very unfortunate. And also most of the time when they get to Europe, they are deported back to their homelands. And as somebody has mentioned here, that in Morocco they are trying to build some walls, at least to barricade these people so that they don't go. So here what I am appealing is what is the ICR going to do at least to assist these people, and two, how would they know that these are economic migrants and these other ones are refugees? Because it's a cause for concern for some of us from Africa. Most of our young men are dying in deep seas. They have been killed in these other countries. Some of them are dying in the desert because most of the time they get lost in the desert because of the winds, and they get lost. They don't know where they are. And you go to some of them will die in the oasis. When they go there to drink, they fall into the oasis and die. So thank you very much. This is my contribution.
Thank you very much, sir, for your very valid concerns. The ICRC traditionally, in collaboration with states at the international conference, has promoted a resolution on migration. And this took place actually in the 29th International Conference and the 30th International Conference. This matter is of great interest and concern to the ICRC for many reasons. Even if it may not fit squarely within the framework of a Geneva Convention setup, in our own view of humanitarian needs which exist, the issue of migration is very important. And being the good colleague that I know he is, I will invite our deputy in the sidelines to share perspectives with you, perhaps during the lunchtime, on added institutional endeavors vis-a-vis the migration file, not only in this region but beyond. I thank you for your concern and your interest in this topic. Ladies and gentlemen, the mic is still open for 2 more minutes, should you wish to postpone your hunger. Ma'am.
I'm Pari from Jigar Global Law School. So for me as a law student, firstly, it was a very enriching conference. It goes without saying. I think all of us felt that we learned a lot. But I think the one thing I'd like to add here, and this is more so reflection on the conference and the subject matter of the conference, it is obvious that we should care, and the reason why we should care about these issues is very pertinent because they concern our brethren, etc. But why be interested in international humanitarian law as a subject, as a body of law, was not something that came as obviously to me as to some of the speakers here because they are significantly engaged in work in international humanitarian law. And I think one of the distinguishing features of this workshop for me was the fact that it became very apparent why we should care. Because when the speakers brought their repository of experience to sort of showcase the different nuances of each and every issue, the fact that when it's about a drone strike, it's not just a simple cost-benefit analysis, but the fact that there are very pragmatic problems with using drones, such as target misidentification, etc. Like when it comes to cyber warfare, it's very difficult to put it squarely under the framework of IHL, and therefore the laws need to be amended accordingly. That to me made it very apparent that it is in fact very important to not just focus on human rights issues and humanitarian legal issues, but to also sort of work on the framework that will then tackle with these issues. Because at the end of the day, the constructive engagement with these issues and eradication of these issues there too, which is what we are all here for, is going to crystallize from the body of international humanitarian law available to us. And so as a young student who's looking at ways and becoming a lawyer actually to help the world, though it's become more of a cliche now, but to me it became very important to sort of engage with these issues and even go back and share with my fellow students that next time I'm going to drag you all also here, even if you want it or not. So thank you very much for making that very clear for me.
Thank you. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. My name is Arif from the Malaysian High Commission, and I think I speak for both the Malaysian High Commission and my colleagues from ASEAN that this workshop conducted both by ALKO and ICRC is a very good step forward, especially from us on the ASEAN region, giving the idea that the idea of international humanitarian law is not the most emphasis on that region, but I think this is a good start for us. My observation for the past 2 days was that a lot has been done and a lot has been said, and I applaud the efforts by both the organization in getting both operational perspective and both theoretical perspective. However, as a suggestion, maybe in the future for events, if you could get maybe someone on the ground who has actually been on the receiving end of a conflict. I would like to quote, in Malaysia we have a conference called the Perdana Global Foundation. During those meetings, usually they have people from Syria or Yemen who will be on the receiving end to give perspective on how the law has actually benefited them. And I think that would be also a good added value for this type of conferences in the future. However, I think that from a non-law perspective person, I think it was easier to understand what was being said. It made it more interesting to follow up and to research. And what I believe that could be added value is that if you could make it appealing to other non-law perspective people. And in doing that, like I suggested, getting people from the other region, and maybe like Professor Hina mentioned, on new issues such as cyber terrorism, nanotechnology, something that still has potential to be explored. So those are our perspectives, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir, and your suggestions are well noted. Well,
let me to congratulate to ALKO and ICRC for really having a very wonderful session. Though I could not able to attend all of this, some of the session I heard, and it is really very enlightened that basically on the basis contemporary issue, which is really important in many conferences and workshops to be highlighted. And that basically the subject chosen is always being required to be relevant, and it has been seen in this workshop. And thanks to those who have been worked this workshop to make it successful, and those people who have been very instrumental, like Anuradha Bakshi and Pandira Sannu and others also, and including Anuradha, Sai Baba and Supriya. So that basically hard work they have put it and made it more to engage the many participants in that. And it's really, and on behalf of ISA, I would like to thanks to both organizations, extending their that basically their invitation to our students to participate in the conference. So I'm really thankful to both organizations. I will keep in great touch to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vinay. Ms. Bakshi.
As one of the co-hosts, I'm very glad indeed to note that all the participants over here have been enriched and they have come to know the nuances concerned with this subject and how important it is for us to know this subject in depth and try to research about it, or in any which way practical to do something about it. I would like to just answer the question or the observation made by the student Ms. Pari from Jindal Law School that we could create some guidelines for this law for it to become more meaningful and operational. But I would just like to say that dissemination and to talk and to deliberate about these issues is the first step in that direction. Unless we don't talk about them and we don't learn about them, it's very difficult to formulate any kind of guidelines. So this is the first step, and I think in my memory of having worked in ALKO for more than 2 decades, this has been one of the most informative and a very, very constructive workshop. I thank my Secretary General and the Head of Delegation of IECRC for their collective initiative to take it, and hope that in the future we would have more such meaningful workshops on some of the issues that have been very eloquently raised by the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bakshi, and much credit to you and your organization also. Ladies and gentlemen, are there any other persons desirous of sharing any thoughts on the mic? Going once, going twice. Okay. Before concluding, I wish to recall that before you would be a document last night which was typed by Dr. Shah based on an exchange we had subsequent to his intervention on his telephone lecture. This is in addition to his lecture for your information and reference. And I wish to end by once again thanking ALKO and thanking colleagues and participants for the support, and recall that, as you know, today is a day globally which celebrates the birth of a person who was caught on a battlefield and decided to dedicate his efforts to something different than to that which occupied him. And he had a different concept of what was just, and it was not necessarily a legal one, but perhaps a human one. And so I leave you with words that don't belong to me, but in my view, I consider fitting to at least part ways with. And it is simple. And I quote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." End quote. I thank you very much and wish you safe onward journeys.
Thank you for letting me participate.
Secretary event.
वो थोड़े दिनों में वो बुक कौन सी चाहिए? No questions?
Maybe I'm self-conscious about it now.
No, I didn't make
I'm never going to ask a question ever again.
Oh, is it? Please do. Same thing happened to me. But you also followed my son.
I went for at least 3 or 4 times, 3 or 4 times before I
I didn't meet this person. No questions. Hey, bye bye. Thank you.
It's done.
Bye bye.
Stay for lunch.
Yeah, खाना तो खाना है. Good.
I got that.
शाम को. Just asking, can they also come for the dinner?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Madam, thank you आपको.
Let's ask.
No, thank you.
अरे thank you आपको.
I apologize for the short
No,
notice.
I just wanted to ask.
Next time.
She's Amrita. She's.
No, we won't.
She's doing
बहुत दिन हो गए क्लास में आपकी ले रही है.
हाँ, एक काम करो, Tuesday को कर लो.
Okay, I'll speak to.
So we'll meet.
अभी बात कर लो.
Because I really miss the interaction. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Shanu. Is that?
It is super.
The one with super.
Yeah.
That's
I will see.
It's there.
The one who was sitting there?
Yes.
Can I leave my bag here and pick it up after lunch? Or you lock it immediately?
No problem.
I should.
Nobody would take it. No issues. Alko is safe. We don't take our own. More often than not, I always have plans.
I don't have any personal.
I hope you behave for 24
The retirement age is 60.
Oh yes, so 24 more at least. At least 24 more.
Whose book is that? Yes. Left it?
That's Sarkar. Wait, there's Sarkar.
Excuse me. I didn't want it. Yes. Yes. It's yours. Yes. And now we have to talk about the
This report, how will we think of the average?
Actually, I have conveyed to Supriya that our own session is coming and we are just the therapists over here. Now we should get back the recording is here and audio.
What do you suggest? We should do this proceed for lunch, same place. But will we?
No, we could have a summary or a little longish summary.
Okay.
We could have it, but I think it would really make.
Certainly. Okay, so which one need first the transcription?
Yes.
Should we do our sense into
Yeah, that was we all do this ourselves.
Okay,
Had
no
we
worries.
got time, we would have done it without problem.
So the tapes are available?
Yes.
It's a tape version?
It's tape and digitally also recorded. So I will.
I think we switched over completely now. I think it's only
Digital. So we can transfer it.
By email or how? Flash?
I'll talk to
either way. I mean, if you want to plug it over there, we can send it over.
I imagine it's a pen drive.
Pen drive.
Pen drive, sure, and pen drive or CDs.
When can that be done?
Sunil,
He'll have to probably.
please, Watson.